Welcome to the Game Changers podcast, where you'll hear from trailblazing women in sport. I'm Sue Anstiss, a founding trustee of the Women's Sport Trust charity and the founder and CEO of Promote PR, one of the UK's leading sports communications agencies. I am incredibly grateful to Barclays for supporting this series of the Game Changers, which will focus on fearless women in football, reinforcing Barclays' huge commitment to the beautiful game. Last year, Barclays announced the biggest ever sponsorship of women's sport in the UK as the Barclays FA Women's Super League became Europe's first fully professional women's football league. Along with this brilliant support for women's professional sport, Barclays also invested in establishing the Girls Football School Partnerships with the aim of ensuring that all girls in England have equal access to football in schools by 2024. My guest this week is Hope Powell, CBE, the trailblazing former England women's football manager and the first woman to be awarded a UEFA Pro licence. Hope's had so many incredible achievements and awards. An OBE, a CBE and honorary degrees from several universities, she was the second woman to be inducted into the English Football Hall of Fame, following in the footsteps of the legendary Lily Parr.
I was brought up on an estate and, I just played it in the street, watched it on TV and then wanted to try and replicate what I saw on TV on the streets. I was a street kid, a street footballer, and my love came from that, just playing and watching it.
And do you think you were aware at that stage that there were no women competing at that level?
I think so. I think the fact that everything you saw was always around men's football. It was nothing to do with there were never any women players shown on TV until I remember Channel 4 at the time showed, I think it was QPR, the first ever, I sound really old, I must be old, viewing, and that was the only time I ever saw it exposed on TV. But generally it was all centred around men's football, to be honest.
And as you mentioned, you were kind of strong playing as a young girl, and I think you and your school girlfriend Jane were banned from playing mixed football with the boys in your school team because you were beating too many teams. So how did that feel to you at the time as a young girl?
Well, I couldn't really understand it at the time. It was just a case of we just wanted to play, and we were good enough to get into the school team, but unfortunately the rules didn't allow it. But as a kid, you don't quite understand why not. The fact that you just want to play and you want to be part of the school team, it made no sense at the time. So it was a little bit disappointing.
You say it's kind of hard playing. Did you ever feel like giving up at that time when you had that kind of pressure? Made you feel stronger to keep playing? And
I don't know. To be honest, I can't remember that far back, but it crossed my mind to stop playing. I think, I was quite sporty. I quite liked and was very good at most sports. So the one that I particularly enjoyed was football. So it never ever stopped. I still went back on the estate and played and continued to play until I was allowed to play organised football again.
And that was around, I said, 1978. You played with Millwall Lionesses. I think you were just 11 or 12. So how did it feel then to be with so many amazing female footballers for the first time, having played on the street in the past?
Yeah, I think I was a little bit shocked, actually, that, it was organised. My first thought was, oh, my God, there's so many girls that play. I thought it was brilliant. And, they were coached at the time, and there were cones, there were bibs, there were goals. It was proper football. So it was great experience for me at that age.
You mentioned playing on some pretty rubbish surfaces through that time. Do you think that kind of improved your skill level of the challenge?
Probably did, actually. I played on concrete, on muddy pitches, on, I don't know, every kind of surface you can think of. So it probably gave me a really good grounding in terms of, my technical ability. So it probably did me a favour in the long run. Probably not my body, but yeah.
Skills. And you went on to get your first cap at just 16, which is pretty extraordinary. How do you think your experience then was different to the young lionesses that are coming through today?
It probably wouldn't happen today because there's obviously a clear pathway, which is great. I think it was quite daunting, actually, being so young. But thankfully, I had at the time, Brenda also got called up. and, you know, some really good people that were there that looked after me. But it was quite intimidating, quite frightening, I think, until obviously you get on the pitch where you feel at ease, and then you know, I was really able to show what I could do. So very different times now because of the clear pathway, and rightly so. You know, there's an opportunity for players to grow and develop, and have that education along the way, and probably have a long-lasting career if they're good enough.
And the podcast is all about trailblazers and also recognising the incredible women behind the scenes making it happen. So can you tell us a little bit about women like Linda Whitehead and Sue Pryors and the women that were behind the scenes then when you were growing up?
Yeah, unsung heroes, really. I think they did a lot that other people probably wouldn't want to do, couldn't do. They kept the clubs afloat. Talking about Sue Pryor, she did so much off the pitch, you know, the organisation, the washing of the kit. She wrote weekly bulletins for the players. She did fundraising. She did everything as I guess the secretary of the club at that time. You know, without much help, you know, one person doing everything, and quite phenomenal actually. And it's really pleasing to know that she's still involved in the game at Charlton. Yeah, and obviously with England, Linda Whitehead again. You know, logistics, sponsorship, you know, making sure all the girls were all right, you know, and these were real good people that without those people, the game probably wouldn't be where it is today. So I think a lot of credit, certainly for me, you know, Sue Pryor and Linda Whitehead in terms of administration and supporting the girls, backroom stuff that nobody sees, that those two are very prominent figures in the game, I would say.
Excellent. That's good to hear. Good to hear. You were called into the FA's Lancaster Gate headquarters for a chat in 1998. And I think at the time you thought it might be something around youth team coaching, but that wasn't what they asked you. So how did you feel? You were just 21.
I was 31.
31, sorry. Yeah. So how did that feel at the time?
Yeah, again, it was a surprise, all very surreal, all very... You know, I think when they said about, you know, the England manager, I tried to really be cool as I am, I guess, just my personality. And then obviously when I left, I was like, oh my God, really? But a real honour. But I wasn't absolutely sure. I couldn't understand it. I couldn't make sense of it, having had no experience in terms of management before. I think I asked the right questions at the time. I asked them, you know, I need some days to think about it. And really it was the influence of my friends. And I think what really stuck in my mind was what Kelly Simmons said at the time. That really stuck in my mind. And then a really good friend of mine was like, well, it was Brenda actually, you know, you've got to take it. Otherwise there will be consequences. So, yeah, you know, I went for it. And I think the fact that, you know, I had little experience of management, I just basically thought about what went before, what I liked, what I didn't like. I had a really good mentor at the time as well, still is my mentor today. And it just helped me get through it, to be honest.
Did you have any idea, do you think, of the pressure and the criticism almost that role would call in as well?
No, because the game wasn't in the limelight as it is today. You know, there was no pressure. The expectation wasn't as great as it is today. So I didn't even think about that, which was probably a good thing. It just allowed me to try and concentrate and do the best I could do at the time.
Because you were still playing at the time. So did you consider the player-manager type role?
No, it too much, too big a job. Too much. And obviously I had to detach myself from what were once teammates that then become the manager of your friends, actually. So I just had to kind of separate the two.
And I loved your comment that in one fell swoop, England got its first black manager, its first woman manager, and its first gay manager. So talk about being a game changer. Were you conscious of that you were such a trailblazer at the time, or was it retrospectively you've looked back?
Retrospectively, I think at the time you know you're so consumed. I think at the time about just trying to do a good job. I think my first thing was I cannot foul this. I cannot foul. You know, and that really drove me because, you know, what was the expectation? Somebody unknown, yes, known as a player, never known as a manager. It was, and I really thought at the time, and I asked the question: is it a token gesture? I was really quite conscious of being a female, being black. Is this all a bit of a PR stunt, really? So I was very conscious of working hard, and not failing was not an option. Whatever success looked like at the time, clearly there were some targets, some things that I wanted to do, some things that I wanted to change, which I did. So the pressure of the job, it was never results driven. It was never about media attention, which did me a favour at the time.
It was an enormous brief, really, with no template to follow. Must have been very daunting in those early days. Did you find it was especially hard as a woman in that role at the FA at the time?
There wasn't the resources and the support there is today, obviously, although I must say that as I grew into the role, that Howard Wilkinson, Robin Russell, they really all supported me, because I kept asking questions. I kept going back and what about this? What about this? What about this? And, Howard in particular really embraced it in the end. I'm not sure. At the beginning, he did say to me, look, I don't follow the women's game. I'm not familiar with it, but I'm here to help. And he was probably my biggest ally. He was fantastic, to be fair. So, it was difficult because it was all about the men's game. It was, as it is today, but not so much so. But I think it allowed me to quietly behind the scenes make changes in my own way.
And you've said, if you like to be liked, probably football management's not for you. Was that one of the hardest parts of the role, do you think?
What, not being liked?
Or showing yourself up against the attack or the pressure and so on from people from the outside?
I think, it's very easy watching the game and, making all these, should have done this. It happens today, and the men should have done this. And people really, and I am very, very sympathetic to all the managers that get criticised by people that really do not understand what goes on behind the scenes.
Sat on the sofas at home.
Yeah, which is, the beauty of the game, I guess. But decisions aren't made randomly. They're made based on the knowledge you have at the time, and you make certain decisions because of other things happening, going on. It's a tough role, and you have to really be hardened to it if you want to be liked and popular. And and we've seen some great managers in men's football, haven't we, gone from hero to zero in a very, very quick space of time. So you have to be prepared for that in management, that you're not always going to be popular.
The pathway for female players, as you mentioned earlier, that whole from all the youth teams and so on, really transformed under your watch. And before you started, there weren't really any youth squads. You just got sort of thrown in at the deep end with senior players. How easy was it to make those changes?
It helped because of competition. So UEFA and FIFA started to promote the youth competitions, which gave me the ammunition to go, I guess, to the board and go, look, this is happening. We need to get a team together. We need to obviously have trials. We need to do all these things to ensure that we are prepared. So when UEFA do an under, I think the first one was, so they did an under-19 competition in my first year. There was a group of players, but we had to build on that. Then they introduced the under-17s. I introduced an under-15 to feed the under-17s at the time. I then introduced an under-21 to feed the seniors, so that there was a clear pathway. And back then we had 2-year age bands. Now, because the talent pool is a lot broader, they're going for single-year age bands, which makes sense. So yeah, it was good to have that in place to, promote the best talent that we had and give them a chance, really.
You were the first woman in the country, I believe, to achieve your pro licence qualification. And there was speculation at the time that you might be the first woman to coach a men's professional team. Did you get close at the time?
I was offered, I won't say who, I was offered a lower league job in the men's game, which I refused. I did think about it, but I refused. I think the assumption was that, working in the men's game is better than working for England. I just couldn't really, and that's a really poor assumption, actually. My passion is the women's game. I would obviously never say no. It's about opportunities, and I've always said it. If an opportunity presented itself that I felt passionately about, then like any other career choices, then I'd look at it. But my passion really is the women's game, and I'm thankful that I stayed in it, and I'm still lucky enough to be in it.
You're very much the driving force behind the Women's Super League. How proud are you to see how that's evolved over the past decade?
It wasn't just me, to be honest. There were a lot of people that were involved in that. I played a very, very small part. I thought at the time it was, we wanted to try and create a league that would be better than any other. We really wanted the league. This is the only bit I would say is a bit disappointing, but understandable. So we wanted to create a league where English players would be at the forefront of it and be the best they can be within the league and actually play, rather than going abroad and playing. Like we had a few players that went off to the States. So you wanted to create a league which would attract, homegrown English talent. As it stands, it's become so good that everybody from abroad wants to come and play in it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's attracted the best talent. So that's a compliment to the league, which is a detriment sometimes to English talent sitting on the bench. A bit unfortunate. I think what they've done in sort of recent years, broadcast deals, live games, weekly live games has been really tremendous. I think certainly the World Cup boosted that in terms of attention around the game. So the Super League, it's great. I think, the challenge is to make it as competitive as it can be, rather than almost being a split league, three leagues within a league. That's the danger. That's the bit. And being involved in it now from a club perspective, you just see the divide, which is a little bit, I'm thinking, right, okay, we have to be careful here. It's starting to end up like the men's game, where you've got the ones that have got the most money, get the best players. And if you've got the best players, you've got the best chance of winning everything, while everybody else struggles around. And it's a bit it's challenging. I think there's some challenges coming that need to be managed.
Really. Excellent. That's good. Good to hear. And I guess it is that whole wanting to take on the positive parts of the men's game without some of the negative side too, but with more funding coming through too. Looking back at your role, I guess your amazing role as England manager for so long, and you commented that you knew in 2011, 2013 that things weren't going so well in some of the tournaments there. Did you alert people at the time? Did you think people perhaps didn't listen to you there?
No, I thought at 2011, I thought we did well. I think 13 was probably, I almost in the tournament. I knew it was going to be a bad tournament. I knew it wasn't. You have this feeling in this sense. And, I was kind of making plans for the next stage. The kids coming through were probably at the point where they would then all be introduced. The kids that are playing now were going to be at the forefront of my next sort of campaign. But sadly, I didn't get the chance to do that. But you have a feeling as a manager and a coach, sometimes it becomes all too familiar for players. And I would have changed it, absolutely changed it. But, it was my decision, and it is what it is. So, it's great to see those younger players now come through and are kind of doing really well.
Yeah, so. Absolutely. And sadly, August 2013, you lost your role there at the FA, and obviously a lot of press and profile around that too. How did you deal with that loss at the time on a personal level?
Yeah, I wasn't. I mean, I can't talk too much about the ins and outs of it because of obviously gagging clauses and all of that. I openly will say I'll be forever disappointed. I think I was treated quite badly, but I guess every manager would say that. It's not nice to lose your job. I think that the biggest thing for me, it was everybody else around me who really took it badly, which probably helped me actually, because I ended up having to look after everybody else. I must give credit to the LMA, who were absolutely fantastic and really supported me through it. But to be honest, it was not pleasant, but it really just made me look forward. That's past. I'm just going to look forward. And I think my mindset and how I very quickly decided that this would not define me really helped me. And the fact that I had to end up looking after everybody else really helped me as well. So it was strange times, but, I got through it as everybody would get through it. Not nice because it's quite public, but in all honesty, I think I did a great job. I loved every minute apart from the last 5 minutes, and I'm very thankful that I got the opportunity to manage my country.
I love that. It must have been pretty exhausting in your role. So you're 15 years, back-to-back tournaments, managing 5 teams, building the academy, helping to form that Super League. You're constantly in the spotlight, almost the face of the women's game as the profile grew, and also fighting those internal battles for funding and support. Do you look back now and think you're almost doing the job of 3 or 4 people, especially where they are now?
When I came away, I was like, I don't know how I did that. I do know because I was so driven and so obsessed to help shift it on, really passionate and wanted some equality to a degree. I think I where I started is where I ended by, I don't want to foul. I don't want to foul myself and I don't want to foul the women's game. And that gave me a real drive. But absolutely, I did a lot of work, which today there are more people that are doing the work, which is great. I just, it would have been great to have it back then.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's one of the things where I say I'll be forever disappointed because I was treated badly. I did a lot.
And I think people do recognise that. I mean, certainly on the podcasts and a lot of the players, so Kelly and Casey and whatever, talk a lot about you and the impact you've had on their past, and then obviously on what they're doing now too. So it's great to hear that too. Do you think at the time, if there had been other senior roles in women's football in the UK, some of these senior manager roles, you might have left of your own accord sooner if there had been in the way that there is now with WSL?
Probably. 2009, when we got to the final, I kind of really wanted to stop then. But the roles weren't, it's so different now. It's so different. But that was the time when I thought, really, I need to stop. But obviously, you still have to pay a mortgage and you still have to do those things that kind of sway you. 2011, I loved that tournament, the World Cup. So, yeah, I was tired in the end.
But looking back now or watching the Lionesses play last summer, etc., do you have some sympathy for Press's attitude to Phil Neville and the way he's now treated as England manager?
I was asked this question a couple of weeks ago when we weren't on lockdown. What do you think about, the She Believe Cup? And it's really difficult. It's unfair because they are friendly tournaments. The friendly tournaments that I was involved in allowed the players like Lucy Bronze, Jordan Nobbs, Steph Houghton, all of those players to get experience, that present them as they are today. So let's not focus on the friendly tournaments. Focus on the tournaments that matter, i.e. the World Cup that's just gone. I mean, focus on the next tournament. And that's the downside of football. The press, I think, got to put it in context. It's a friendly tournament. They're friendly matches. Make the judgment when it matters, in my opinion.
And you mentioned almost leaving that role and then looking forward and doing some amazing stuff. And you did some work with FIFA and Uefa on a global basis. Can you tell us a little bit about what you did there?
So a lot of coach education, a lot of speaking at conferences. So just sharing a bit of my knowledge and imparting it with other coaches was brilliant. I loved it. Travelled for 2 years around the globe, all over, just sharing my knowledge and helping coaches develop was fantastic opportunity. And I'm really thankful for, FIFA and Uefa that give not just me, lots of other female coaches that can't perhaps get in the game full time, the opportunity to go and influence and help other coaches in developing countries, in developed countries. It was brilliant. I really enjoyed it, really loved it. So, yeah, I had a good time doing it. And it really gave me a chance to reflect, take time out, meet loads of different people. Yeah, it was good times.
Excellent. And then back to Brighton Hove Albion. It's been your second year now?
third.
Third year, into your third year. So people, I guess, surprised that you took a role at the time, perhaps in WSL2 rather than a...
Yeah. Well, I mean, before I went to the PFA, as you probably know, and so the whole coach education, and then I really just thought, I wanted to get back on the grass. I started to put the feelers out. I thought, right, I think I'm ready to come back on the grass, be part of a game, be part of a team. Brighton, because of the chief exec, who I know very well for the time at the FA, I knew they had ambitions to be in WSL1, met the club, good club, players that wanted to do well, the club that wanted to do well, good choice, a good fit, good match for me. So I was more than happy. And I'm a bit of a builder. I like to build stuff rather than the other way around. So, yeah, it was perfect. It was ideal. And WSL2, I just thought, what a great experience.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And you're enjoying your time there? You're building, as you said.
Fantastic club, fantastic people. I feel very honoured and lucky to be at a club that value the women's game and value people. So very happy.
And a beautiful part of the world as well.
Yes. And then I come back, but yeah.
Excellent. And just finally, so obviously you've achieved so much in your career and had a massive impact on the women's game. What's next in your career? Clearly you're well established at Brighton, but are there other ambitions that you have within the game?
Yes, I would like to win the league, win the Champions League. Yeah, all those things. I want the club to grow, develop. I'd like to, I think my sort of next ambitions, hopefully within Brighton, is, I'd like to come off the grass at some point and be the sort of technical director, something along that guise. Still be involved in the game. Love to stay at Brighton. I keep saying, don't fire me just yet. Want to stay, but it's such a good club. I feel very lucky and very honoured to be there. So to stay within the club, don't necessarily want to stay on the grass forever. The thing is, when you're away from the grass, then you miss it. Then you want to go back. Yeah. But yeah, still to be involved in it. And I think the thing is, I love, I've got a very, very good team and I want to help them as people develop. I'm very passionate about developing others and helping others be the best they can be. So yeah.
Thanks so much to Hope for taking the time from her very busy schedule to talk with me. Thanks also to Barclays for their support for the Game Changers podcast, which enables us to take the stories of these amazing, fearless women in football to a huge new audience. If you've enjoyed this podcast, then please make sure you don't miss out on future episodes by subscribing to the Game Changers. It would also be fantastic if you could give us a rating or a review wherever you get your podcasts. It really does make a big difference. Thanks to Sam Walker from What Goes On Media, who's been a brilliant executive producer for this series of the Game Changers podcast. If you want to find out more about all my guests, you can at promotepr.com/gamechangers, and you can find me across social media at Sue Anstiss or the Game Changers on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. The Game Changers. Fearless women in football.